Well, hello and welcome to this week's Facebook Live where we answer question of the week. Now, the question of the week I've got today, once again I've got it on my iPhone, is actually sent through by an unknown. So someone sent me an email and forgot to say who they were or wants to remain anonymous. That's cool. I'm still going to answer their question because it's a valuable question. The question is, I'd like to know more about Kindle publishing in general. How should I publish? What strategy is the best to reach good rankings? Now, I'm actually going to call that 3 questions in one. I can see some of you jumping on, so excellent. Well done. Looking forward to hearing if you've got any comments below or questions for future weeks. There's 3 parts to that question, so I'm going to answer it in 3 parts. The first is to do with Kindle. So they specifically say, how should I publish after they've asked about Kindle? Now, without going against what a lot of the rest of the world seems to tell you, which doesn't necessarily mean they're giving you the right advice, I'm going to advise you not to publish on Kindle directly. And what I mean by that is when you publish on Kindle directly, or on Amazon for that matter, if you're selling the printed book as well, what you actually do is you give them the rights to do whatever they want to with your book, which isn't a problem. That's the same with all bookstore distribution. But as soon as you've locked into them, there's what's called a bookstore distribution channel. And it is illegal to be on any bookstore distribution channel that overlaps with another distribution channel at the same time. Meaning if you list anything on Amazon Direct and you then want your book, for example, to go through a traditional channel where it can be available in all printed and physical bookstores all over the world, you can't use that channel because Amazon's on it. So I need to be very clear about what I'm saying. I'm not saying don't list on Kindle. Do list on Kindle by all means. Of course you want every book to be available as an ebook on Kindle, as you want every printed book to be available on Amazon. I'm saying don't list directly with Kindle or with Create Space for your printed book, for example. What I do suggest you do is I suggest you find one bookstore distribution portal that includes everything you want. For example, the printed book and the ebook, lists on Amazon but also iTunes, does physical stores like our Dimmicks, but does digital stores as well, such as Barnes and Nobles, and wherever possible, does it in every country of the world. Now, this is hard enough to find it itself, but then I'm going to make another suggestion to you. Don't just find that, but find one that's set up for your printed book side of things, print on demand and drop shipping. And I can see more people jumping on now, so excellent, good to have you guys here. So what I want you to do is find one channel that covers all of that. Now you can go out and search and try and find this yourself, or you can take my recommendation. I've already found one for you. Now, a lot of the time you'll find I don't recommend a lot of people, and the reason for that is I have very high standards. So if it doesn't meet my standard, I don't recommend it, and I find a way to do it myself for my customers so that their standard is met. But I'm going to recommend these guys because I can't find anyone as good as them anywhere else in the world. And the company's name is Ingram Spark. Now, that name means 2 things. Firstly, it means they're owned by Ingram, which is the largest traditional bookstore distributor in the world, which means they give, through the Ingram Spark portal, self-publishers access to that network. Not only that, but you can upload your printed book, your ebook, once complete, click of a button, literally hit upload. It's that simple. You can list both formats of multiple titles, no cost involved other than a setup fee if you want to put it into bookstores, or a setup fee if you want to set it up print on demand. And for the print on demand point of view, what you've got is amazing things happening. For example, because they've got locations all over the world that do their print on demand services, they're associated with a brother-sister company called Lightning Source, you can actually place an order, have it printed the next day, have it shipped the following in the local area, in the local currency, giving you local postage turnaround times as well as rates. Top that up with their fantastic customer service, and that their print prices are usually half the price of anywhere else, and you can see why I'm suggesting you use them. So that should answer the first part of the question. Not saying that you should not be on Kindle, but saying the best way to get on Kindle, which also answers the second part of the question, how should I publish? That's how I suggest you publish. There's many other stages in the publishing process, such as writing, editing, illustration, design, registering of the book. But when it comes to the bookstore distribution, that's what I recommend. And when it comes to the printing, therefore, that's what I recommend as well. So really important, we've covered that in the first 2. But then she's asked another part to the question, what strategy is the best to reach good ratings? Now, this is an Amazon strategy, so I am going to talk about Amazon here. Once you've listed the correct way, and I'll come to a minute as to what that is, then to become a #1 Amazon bestseller, and this is actually a lot easier to do than people think. There is a lot of people, I'm not going to name names, but out there that literally charge thousands and thousands of dollars to have people use their services in order to become a bestseller on Amazon. Now, to be perfectly honest with you, and I'm probably wrecking their income here by sharing this secret with you, but that status, well, in my opinion, it's not worth the paper it's printed on. But the reason for that is it changes so quickly. For example, to become a bestseller on Amazon, you only need to be in the first so many. Some people deem it the top 100, other people deem it the top 40. It's debatable. There is nowhere this is written down in concrete. But the top so many in any category at any given time, and that gives you bestseller status. So for example, if you were listed in 3 categories, and in one of those categories, every other book in that category sold 5 copies that day, but you sold 6, you're instantly an Amazon #1 bestseller. Now, 6 copies of your book, I'm not saying that's a bad thing to do, selling 6 copies in one day, but it's not going to exactly break your bank account. It's not going to make you millions of dollars. But hey, you just became an Amazon bestseller and a #1 because you sold more than anyone else. You can see now why I don't think it's worth the paper it's printed on. But that doesn't mean I don't think you should get the status. Just because I said it's not worth much and people are marketing it, that doesn't mean you can't market and you can't have that status too, or people are going to ask you why you didn't do it. For example, one day I went, oh, hold on, I'm telling people this, I'm sharing it with them, I'm helping their success, but because I thought it was totally useless, I never bothered becoming an Amazon bestseller. I'm like, that doesn't look so good for me. So then I went, you know what, I'm going to do this, why not? But I'm not going to put any effort in, because any of you guys that know me, you know I'm all about automated marketing. So I automated an Amazon bestseller campaign. I did it on 4 books, in 2 formats, the printed book and the ebook, at the same time. I set up pre-automated emails to go out to my list and messages to post on social media at set intervals saying set things throughout the day, and I ignored them. Now, this is not my advice to you. I was just testing a strategy. This is not my advice to you at all. You don't ignore them when you're doing a bestseller campaign. If you want to be #1, when you get a comment on a post, you go back and write straight away back to that comment and you keep things interactive. But I was just testing what kind of results you could get without trying. By the end of the 24 hours, averaged across my 8 books, or 4 books in 2 formats, I was an average of #40. Now, I didn't sell millions of books that day. I did obviously sell books, got lots of reviews. This was all part of the strategy. But I didn't sell millions of books, and I averaged 40. Now, that means some were above that. I actually had some in the 10s. That was awesome for doing nothing. But some were, of course, well below that. But my point is they were all technically Amazon bestsellers, and I did nothing to achieve it. So it's not worth, as I said, the paper it's printed on. But if it's that easy, you should still do it. In fact, I have customers who are regularly #1 bestsellers in all 3 categories they list in. Now, I have heard these days you can list in more categories on Amazon Direct, but I've just told you not to do that. So going through Ingram Spark, there is only 3 categories, but if you've got 2 formats of your book, that's actually 6, if you get what I'm saying. They regularly become #1 bestsellers in all 3 categories. And here's the 3 techniques they use to do it. And that should sum up the question I've got here. Technique #1. When you list with Ingram Spark, make sure you pick the right categories. For example, if your book was a children's book, do not pick a children's book category. I know that sounds silly and I don't even work with children's books these days. But my point is the children's books categories are very limited. Whereas your book might be about children or for children, but might actually be for the parents to read. For example, you're the expert in autism or ADHD or something like that. If the book's aimed at the parents, pick the relevant category. And I'm loving the hearts and smiles that are coming through. That's excellent. Pick the relevant category. Something about parenting kids with autism or parenting kids with ADHD. Because all of a sudden you're in a better niche category. That's within parenting, that's within special needs, that's within ADHD or autism. You're in a much more niche category and therefore it's easier to get that bestseller status. That's tip #1. Tip #2, you need to work for your bestseller status. And by the way, hi, I can see more of you coming on and some of you aren't coming on privately now. I can even see your names. So hi, John, and hi, Vivian. Good to have you here. And what actually happens when you're doing this, when you're trying to get this bestseller status, you need to let people know about it. This example I just gave you was what not to do. I intentionally did it wrong because I wanted to see how easy this was. And as I said, if I can average #40, which is a bestseller, and hi Chris says you're coming on too, if I can average #40 by doing just about no work or no active work in the 24 hours, I'm sure it's easy enough for you guys, and as I said, my customers do it regularly, to become #1 time and time again. And I say time and time again because that's what they do. They might have a low week of sales, so they become an Amazon #1 bestseller on the weekend just to boost sales that week. It really is that easy, but you have to do the next 2 steps as well. The first is, and we've got more people coming on, I'll stop mentioning names because there's too many of you coming up on the screen, but The second thing that you need to do is you actually need to let people know that you're doing it. I know that sounds stupid, but if you sell one copy of your book, you get a ranking. Now that ranking might be appalling. That might be number 564017, which means there's like nearly 500,000 people that have sold more copies than you that day. That's outrageous, but once you've got a ranking, you can work with it. You will not have a ranking until you sell a certain number of copies. And after you've sold a certain number of copies, for example, you do a bestseller campaign and then you don't for a while, you can, if you don't regularly become a bestseller, lose that ranking. So once you've got a ranking, that's a huge start. Let people know. Don't say I'm number 500,000. No one cares about that. Say I just got my first ranking on Amazon. I'm really excited. Who'd like to review my book or buy a copy for a friend or something like that to help me get bestseller status? Watch what a couple of sales or a couple of reviews will do, as well as comments in that thread. And that's why I said don't do what I did in my test. Make sure when you write a comment, if someone comments back, whether it's on any kind of social media or whether it's a reply to an email or however you're letting them know, make sure you comment back to them. Make sure you tag them so that they're going to see that comment, but also so all their friends will, because you want them to know what you're doing. That's step 2, notifying them. Now, using this strategy, so long as you're in the right categories, because I've told you don't need to sell that many to get this status, you will quickly and easily become a bestseller. Now, it doesn't matter how you define bestseller, as I said. Some people say it's in the top 100, some people say it's in the top 40. It's actually not very well documented, so there's no proof of what it actually is. But I'm going to say anywhere between the top 100 or 40. Once you're in that status, so let's say 2 digits or less, now you're serious. So you go on to step 3. Step 3 is help me become, and thanks for the smiles and likes again, can't see the faces popping up, but whoever that was, fantastic. Help me become a #1 bestseller. Now you can have the same calls to action. There you go, saw that one, Trish recognised her photo. Or you can have a different one. Doesn't really matter what you do. But what matters is that you vary it, what you're saying, but that you're sending people there. What matters is the status update. It's not I'm trying to become an Amazon bestseller, it's what you're up to. So if you were 99 when you wrote the post and 10 minutes later you're at 57, either update the post with a post, actually a picture, you can take a screenshot of Amazon and say, hey, thanks guys, I'm already at 57, who's going to help me get further? Who's going to help me reach #1? You might get #1 in one category, but you're only 3 in the other and you're 27 in the other. That just means people sold more copies than you in that category. I've already reached #1, guys. Help me. I'm probably giving too much away in this one video if you get where I'm going, guys. But my point is this stuff is invaluable. People charge thousands of dollars to give you this information. I'm giving it to you free today. Giving it to you for 3 reasons. Firstly, someone asked me, wish they had told me their name so I could thank them for the question. But hey, guys, whoever anonymously asked me the question, well, you guys are benefiting from that. Secondly, because I don't want you to get ripped off and pay $5,000 for something you don't need to, and I've seen it happen too many times in the past. But thirdly, because I want you to employ the strategy. As with all good strategies, it doesn't work if you don't use it. It's like all these books we're trying to sell in the first place. People buy a copy of your book, they put it on the shelf, they never read it, it doesn't help them. I've given you the information. I haven't charged you for it. Please go out there and apply it. Become #1 bestsellers time and time again with your books. If you've got any questions around it, if you do something that doesn't work quite as fast as you thought it would, or you can't remember part of the strategy I gave you, hey, feel free to watch the replay of this video. But also, ask me another question. I'll answer it in more detail in another question of the week. I don't mind. I'm here to help you guys. But if I've given you that information, if I haven't charged you for it and you don't use it, well, it's almost like a personal insult to me. So let's not go there, guys. I haven't started these questions of weeks to do that. So I'm here to help you when you want help. Ask your questions below, send them through in the week, and I'll see you guys same time, same place next week. Until then, I wish you every publishing and marketing success.